In this video, we're going to talk about using learning goals and success criteria to communicate to students what success looks like. The learning goal for this module is to understand how to write and use learning goals and success criteria in the classroom. There are 3 success criteria. Know the difference between a learning goal and success criteria, write a learning goal with confidence, and write success criteria using student-friendly language. The practice of using learning goals and success criteria is deeply connected to the highly effective strategy of feedback. When we're looking at the new art and science of teaching, the area of feedback is in orange here, and you can see that it is used in area number 1, providing and communicating clear learning goals. Most of you are very familiar with learning goals, so we're just going to spend one slide doing a quick revision of learning goals before we move on to success criteria. The learning goal states the overall goal for the learning. A learning goal may cover one lesson or a sequence of lessons. Learning goals state what the learner should know or be able to do. Declarative learning goals, which state what students should know or understand, contain a cognition. For example, students will understand the structure of a report. As the unit progresses, the cognition may change to a higher cognition. For example, students will write a report. A procedural learning goal relates to a skill, so we don't always use a cognition. For example, students will learn to surf. Learning goals are not activities. For example, completing page 56 of the textbook is not a learning goal. The learning goal is written on the board for all indoor lessons and students write it in their books. It is not sufficient to just have it on the first slide of a PowerPoint, as the learning goal needs to be referred back to throughout the lesson and also at the end of the lesson. Feedback comes in 3 parts. Where am I going? Also called feed up. How am I going? Referred to as feedback. And where to next, which is feed forward. A lot of teachers are familiar with the constant feedback given to students on how they are going, where they are at, and then even the next part of where they are going next. But the first question, where am I going, is deeply tied to the learning goal and success criteria, and is a question we need to address explicitly with students right at the start. The learning goal answers the question of where am I going, but for the students to understand if they have been successful getting there, we need more than just a learning goal. There are many ways in which you already share criteria for success with students. Firstly, through criteria sheets. This allows students to understand the assessment criteria before they even start engaging in the assessment. Secondly, through exemplars, where we break down what an effective piece of work looks like. And some of you, I know, are starting to use Bump It Up walls. These are extremely effective so that students are presented with several exemplars at different levels, and they are provided with explicit benchmarks and students can track their own growth. So what is a success criteria? Success criteria clearly communicates to students what they need to do to achieve the learning goal. They are clear and specific. They use student-friendly language and are viewable for students at all times, so students can refer back to them. Therefore, the success criteria needs to be written on the board and students need to write them in their books. Often your success criteria will also include a cognition. To really understand success criteria, it's important to understand that we want students to move from surface learning into deep learning. So surface learning is where we start as learners and we have to remember the facts and the figures, and there's lots of things to remember. But then we want students to move into deep learning through things like comparing, contrasting, and applying their knowledge. And ultimately, we want them to be able to transfer this to apply to later tasks. So you might actually have more than one success criteria for a learning goal, showing students how they can move from surface learning to deep learning and then even into be able to transfer that understanding. So the learning goal is our overall goal or understanding for the lesson, and the success criteria clearly communicates to students what they need to do to be able to be successful at meeting the learning goal. So let's look at a basic learning goal. This learning goal has the cognition understand in it. With the goal written on the board, we deconstruct the learning goal with the students. This is a great way to find out what students already do or don't know, They might be able to identify that understand is a cognition. You might even talk about how it's low down on Bloom's taxonomy, but we need to know things before we can work up into the higher cognitions. Students might be able to give you a synonym for that cognition, such as no in this example. Here I have annotated information reports with what I expect students might be able to say about an information report, that it is a genre or a text type. It is facts about living or non-living things, and they might know parts of an information report, such as classification or description. Then we have our success criteria. So I have chosen 2 success criteria for this learning goal. The first is I can describe the features of an information report. So this is at a surface level, and I can create an information report. So this is at a deeper level. This also acknowledges that students need to be able to describe language features at a surface level before they can then go and apply this understanding to create one. It's really important that both success criteria are presented up front and not released gradually to students. You will see that I've chosen to use I can statements in the success criteria, which in my experience, students can relate to the success criteria a little easy if you use I can statements. You'll also be able to see that I've chosen appropriate cognitions for each of the success criteria, and this helps students to understand the type of thinking that's required for the task. Let's take a look at another example. This is a psychology example this time. So the learning goal is to understand classical conditioning. I'm not going to deconstruct it as I'd like to focus on these success criteria here. I have 2 success criteria. I can define the key terms of classical conditioning, that's your surface level, and I can apply my knowledge to a scenario, and there's your deeper level. Please note that the success criteria is not to complete questions 3 and 4 A, B, C, for example. Again, I've used I can statements, and I've also used a cognition. Using the content descriptors in ACARA is a perfect resource for helping you to write success criteria. Also remember that your learning goal and success criteria might actually occur over multiple lessons, not necessarily just one. So let's do a quick review of what we've covered in this video. Our learning goal and our success criteria is written on the board, and students write them both in their books unless you're doing a lesson outside. A learning goal and success criteria might occur during one lesson, or it might go over multiple lessons. Discuss the learning goal and success criteria at the start of the lesson. Revisit throughout the lesson as you talk to students about what their next steps are, and review it at the end of the lesson. Ensure you use student-friendly language. They can't just be words on a board. Students need to engage and interact with the learning goal and success criteria and use them for reflection. And remember that there are other things that you can use to support student success, such as exemplars and criteria sheets.